My wife, Olivia, cheated on me in front of everyone at our anniversary dinner. I divorced her and started over, building a stronger life for myself. I've always been a straightforward guy who values hard work and loyalty. My parents taught me the importance of honesty and perseverance. My dad built his accounting business from the ground up, and my mom was a dedicated school teacher. Their hard work and commitment set a high bar for me. When I met Olivia at a friend's barbecue, we hit it off right away. She'd just gone through a tough breakup, but our conversations felt easy, and before long, we became close friends. Over time, that friendship turned into love. 2 years later, we tied the knot, and I thought our life together was perfect. Some days are tough, like when you wake up late, rush out the door, and nothing seems to go right. This day started just like that, and things only got worse. Olivia and I had been together almost 5 years by then. We met at that barbecue, and at the time she was still getting over her breakup. Our friends thought I might help her move on, and at first I wasn't so sure, but we ended up forming a real friendship. About 6 months later, I asked her out, and 2 years after we met, I proposed. I was overjoyed when she said yes. I honestly thought we had something special, something unbreakable. That was until tonight. Ethan, Olivia asked while I was polishing my shoes, should I wear the black or beige heels tonight? You look good in either, but the black ones really show off your calves, I said. Olivia loved to dress up, but she wasn't always confident about fashion. I liked that she'd ask for my opinion, though. After a stressful day at work, dealing with a tough audit, I was exhausted. Olivia had been excited about her high school reunion all week, and I could tell she didn't notice how worn out I was. In the past, she'd always comforted me when I had a rough day, but this week it felt like all her focus was on the reunion. Even though I felt a bit neglected, I tried my best to be supportive. At the reunion, Olivia was quickly surrounded by her old friends. I ended up sitting alone with Sophia and Daniel, our mutual friends. Olivia barely talked to me, and I noticed people giving me strange looks. She seemed happy enough, but there was something off. As dinner wrapped up, Olivia and Sophia disappeared for a while, and everyone started making plans to head to a club for more drinks and dancing. I started to get suspicious. Daniel, what's going on? I asked, looking around when Olivia and Sophia hadn't returned yet. Sorry, Ethan, Daniel said, flinching when I touched his shoulder. I'm not sure what you mean. I gave him a puzzled look, then noticed Sophia walking back into the room, avoiding my gaze. Come on, Sophia. Where's Olivia? I asked, my worry turning to frustration. Sophia paused, glanced at Daniel, and looked around, clearly struggling to find the right words. Sorry, Ethan. She's with the band heading to the club. Without telling me? I asked, the anger rising in my chest. What aren't you telling me? They both looked away. I didn't wait another second. I rushed to the club, driving faster than usual. When I arrived, I didn't need to look hard to find Olivia. She was dancing close with another guy. My stomach dropped, and I could feel the eyes of our former classmates on me. Sophia came up behind me, startling me. This is Olivia's first love, Lucas, Sophia said quietly. They grew up together and dated through high school. He got a scholarship and they broke up when he left for college. I watched them dance, my heart sinking. He's been back for a few months, Sophia added, moved here with his job. Seems like they didn't have much trouble getting back together, I muttered under my breath. They were meant to be, Ethan, Sophia said softly, a strange mix of emotions in her voice. The song ended and Lucas kissed Olivia right in front of me. I felt my anger surge so much that I clenched my fists so tight I could feel the blood. Olivia noticed me standing there and made her way over, leaving Lucas behind. Lucas was my first love, Ethan, she said, like it was no big deal. We promised to get back together when he came back, she added matter-of-factly. So you really did get back together, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Don't be like that, she scolded me. Lucas and I are meant to be together. We're married, Olivia, I shot back. I'm sorry, Ethan, she said, looking around nervously. But we need to divorce. Lucas and I have a deeper connection. I could feel the weight of her words. People were starting to stare as a bouncer approached. You've never been good at handling these kinds of situations, Olivia trailed off, her voice losing its confidence. But I love you, Ethan, I really do. It's just not like it was with Lucas. Lucas stepped up and put his arm around Olivia like he owned her. You must be Ethan, he said with fake concern. It's Ethane to you, I snapped, not holding back. Okay, I get it, Lucas said, brushing it off. You're upset. We've been together since I got back, and Olivia's leaving you. Olivia's face went pale, her eyes wide, like she wasn't expecting it to come out like that. Lucas immediately moved to shield her, like he was ready to protect her from the truth. Look, Ethane, he said, trying to sound calm, I'm sorry you found out this way, but maybe it's for the best. Olivia says you've been a great husband. I couldn't believe it. It would be nice if we could all be friends, Lucas continued, like he was trying to smooth things over. After all, we share so many mutual friends. I looked at Olivia, then back at Lucas. Not for long, I muttered. Lucas tried to respond, but I cut him off. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice steady but filled with growing anger. You two were in love, then Lucas moved away. Olivia and I met, fell in love, and got married. Now Lucas is back, and you two picked up right where you left off, behind my back, while everyone else knew. Now I'm here, humiliated. Ethan, it wasn't supposed to be like this, Olivia started, trying to explain. Wasn't supposed to be what? I shouted, the frustration bubbling up. You ignored me all week, dragged me here, then ditched me. You just left without saying a word, hoping I wouldn't find out? Lucas tried to speak, but I didn't let him. Don't you dare speak, Romeo, I snapped, my voice cold and sharp. You two have been sneaking around for months, and now you think you can just waltz in and rub it in my face? Look, Ethan, Lucas said, his voice trying to smooth things over. Olivia and I were meant to be together. I know this hurts, but she loves me. We're getting married, and you two need to get divorced. I could barely hold back my anger. I don't think you're in a position to tell me what to do, I said quietly, the words icy and deliberate. Ethanui, Olivia interjected, her voice wavering. I'm sorry, but this is the best way. It's going to hurt, but it's for the best in the long run. She paused, as though she thought I might soften. I corrected her again. It's Ethanui. She swallowed hard, eyes darting nervously. Ethanui, I know you're hurting, she said, her voice almost pleading. We're young. You'll move on, I promise. I could see her face pale as I just stared at her, rage simmering beneath the surface. My silence made her even more uncomfortable. Ethanui, maybe it's time for you to leave, Lucas said now with a smug look on his face. Everyone here knows Olivia and I belong together, and you're just the extra piece in the puzzle. I didn't flinch. I looked at the people around me, seeing their uneasy stares, but I didn't care. I'm glad we're in agreement on something, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Lucas seemed to think I was with him, smiling like we'd reached some mutual understanding. Now that everything's out in the open, Olivia and I will give you space, Lucas continued. We won't come to the house this weekend or next week, so you can get things packed. Move out. I asked, raising an eyebrow. Well, it's Olivia's house, Lucas said, as if that explained everything. I see, I replied, my voice low, filled with quiet anger. Ethanui, Olivia said, as if she was explaining something obvious. We thought it'd be easier for you. The house is perfect for Lucas and me to raise kids. It's too much space for just you. I see, I repeated, the words coming out like a hiss, my irritation growing by the second. The room went quiet again, and then the DJ started playing music, but no one moved. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Lucas stood up, speaking louder now. I'm sorry, Ethanui, but this is how it is, he said, trying to sound sympathetic. I know it's tough, but don't hold it against us. He held out his hand, but I didn't take it. I stared at his hand, then back at him. He quickly pulled it back, clearly uncomfortable with the way things were going. He cleared his throat. Well, I guess this is goodbye, he said, and I could tell he was eager to leave. I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked out, leaving them both standing there. No one stopped me. The bouncers opened the door for me as I left, and the noise from the club seemed to vanish behind me. Are you all right? One of the bouncers asked, looking genuinely concerned. No, I said flatly, not even bothering to pretend. The other bouncer tried to lighten the mood. Well, if you wanted to go back in there and throw a couple punches, we can give you a minute before we pull you out. For the first time that night, I actually laughed bitterly. The bouncer smirked. Tempting, but I don't need a night in jail, I said, my voice dry. I've seen some nasty breakups, the first bouncer said, shaking his head. But this one? This is cold. I'm sorry, I said, waving off the sympathy. Don't worry about it. I'll just go home and change the locks, I replied, trying to keep things light. But the weight of it all was suffocating. The second bouncer raised an eyebrow, like he was about to say something more, but I didn't stick around for it. We shook hands, and I left the club, feeling like the last part of me was being pulled away. I stopped at a hardware store on my way home. It was late, but I didn't care. I bought new locks, deadbolts, moving boxes, and packing tape. When I got home, I changed the locks and started packing Olivia's things. A few hours later, exhausted and feeling hollow, I sat down with a drink in my hand, just staring at the walls. I opened my laptop and did what needed to be done. Canceled the joint credit cards, opened a new account, and moved half of our savings into it. I found the legal folder with all our documents, house deeds, investments, and the prenuptial agreement. It didn't cover infidelity, but it protected my business, and that's all I cared about at that point. Sleep was a struggle. I managed only a few hours of fitful rest. The next morning, I went to a cafe, trying to clear my mind. I ordered some breakfast and spent a little time drafting a letter to my lawyer. He called me soon after, shocked by the news, but assured me he'd file the divorce papers on Monday and give me the name of someone who could help. When I got home, Daniel and Sophia were waiting for me in the driveway. I parked on the curb and got out, already knowing what was coming. "Ethan, we need to talk," Sophia started, but I didn't let her finish. "It's Ethanery," I said firmly, holding up my hand. "Excuse me?" she asked, clearly caught off guard. "My name is Ethanery. Only people I consider close enough can call me Ethan." "Ethan, listen, buddy," Daniel started, his voice trying to sound apologetic. "We're really sorry about what happened last night. It wasn't like—" I raised my hand again, silencing him. I didn't want to hear it. I turned my eyes to a tree across the road, one of its limbs broken off by a storm. Felt like my situation, torn apart and left behind. Losing Olivia felt like losing a limb. I turned back to Daniel and Sophia, my tears flowing freely now. "Don't try to make excuses," I hissed, my voice trembling with anger. "You've known for months that Olivia's been cheating, and you said nothing." "But Ethanery, it's not what you think," Sophia started, her voice soft. "Love doesn't betray," I interrupted, my voice cracking. "Real love doesn't humiliate. I thought Olivia and I had something real. I never doubted her. I gave her everything." "I know," Sophia said, her own voice breaking. "But Olivia and Lucas—" "Stop," I shouted, my rage boiling over. "I don't want to hear about Olivia and Lucas anymore. I wasted 7 years of my life," I said, my words coming out in a rush. 7 years of supporting her, dealing with her struggles, talking about growing old together, and I was just her backup plan. I looked them in the eyes, and my pain and fury broke through. Why does Lucas get to come back and take everything? All my effort, all the love I gave her? He gets it all. Daniel and Sophia didn't know what to say, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of guilt in their eyes. But it didn't matter. "Screw it," I said, my voice bitter. "Get off my property." Daniel started to say something, but I cut him off with a glare. "I get it," I said, my tone harsh. "You thought Olivia and I would last forever. But now Lucas is back, and they're happy, right?" I stared at him, daring him to say something. But I didn't need to hear it. "I get it. You thought Olivia and I were supposed to last forever, didn't you? But now that Lucas is back, it's okay, right? They deserve to be happy, I guess." I paused, anger building up in my chest. "What about my happiness?" I demanded. They didn't have an answer. "I deserve a faithful wife and friends who actually care about me," I continued, my voice low and bitter. "I don't need your pity. If I seem bitter, that's because I am. Try walking a mile in my shoes. Then maybe you'll understand where I'm coming from." I turned to Daniel, my words sharp as knives. "Daniel, when Sophia leaves you for her true love, you'll finally know what this feels like." Daniel stiffened and tightened his grip on Sophia's arm, his face hardening. "All right, Ethanery," he said, his voice stiff. "We're leaving. But is there anything we can do?" I glanced at their minivan parked on the curb. "Wait here," I said. I walked back into the house, grabbed several boxes packed with Olivia's things, and tossed them in front of them with a hard thud. Some fragile items cracked and shattered on the ground. "Take these to Olivia's new place." "But Olivia said she needs the house, and you're the one who has to move out," Sophia objected, her voice tentative. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "It's not her house," I said flatly. "Tell her she's not welcome back. Everything that belongs to her is in these boxes. The divorce papers will be sent out Monday." Sophia opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "No, Sophia. She lied to me for years, betrayed me with Lucas. She gets what she deserves." I watched them load up the boxes, the weight of the moment hanging in the air. I knew they realized they had lost my friendship, but I wasn't about to stick around to see their regret. I wasn't interested in their apologies anymore. That night, I sank into a haze of alcohol and rage. I got drunk, smashed things in the house, and let the anger tear through me. I threw a vase, one from our first anniversary, and watched it shatter. I wrecked furniture, punched holes in the walls, tore off cabinet doors, and dented the refrigerator. I didn't care anymore. I woke up the next morning with a brutal hangover. My head was pounding, my hands covered in blood, and I was sure I'd broken at least one of my fingers. The house was in ruins. The living room was a mess, the walls damaged, and the kitchen was destroyed. I remember the twisted satisfaction I felt from hitting that refrigerator. I opened the fridge to find expired orange juice, took some painkillers, and downed it with a big gulp. After about half an hour, the pain in my hand lessened, but the fog in my head didn't clear. I wandered into the living room, sitting down amidst the broken chairs and staring at the cracked TV screen. The day passed in a blur, and I didn't care to remember much of it. Later, I saw the doctor, who confirmed hairline fractures in both arms and bandaged me up. I ignored the phone calls that came in, including from Daniel and Sophia. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone. That night, I went to bed with a mix of exhaustion and numbness, not remembering much except the wreckage I'd caused and the trip to the doctor. Monday morning, I dragged myself to the office. I checked emails, and as usual, I prepared for the 9 a.m. team meeting. My receptionist Megan came in, immediately noticing the bandages. She sat down without saying a word. "Bad weekend?" she asked quietly. I sighed and turned to face her. "Olivia dumped me for her true love," I said flatly, my voice hollow. "What?" Megan gasped. "Are you serious?" I showed her my bandaged hands, my eyes starting to water. "It's true," I replied. "Everyone at the reunion knew," I continued. "Olivia had been cheating with Lucas, and Friday night they ambushed me." I broke down. Megan reached over and hugged me. I told her everything, how I trashed the house in a drunken rage and how I had to go to the doctor. By the time we dried our eyes, it was time for the meeting. Megan led the team in, and I tried to act normal, though it felt impossible. "Hope everyone had a good weekend," I said, glancing at my bandaged hands. "This week, let's get started." But Megan cut me off. "Ethainery, I'm sorry, but you can't just pretend like everything's fine after what happened," she said, turning to the team. Ethainery was betrayed by his wife and friends. Olivia's been cheating and left him in the most humiliating way possible. She looked at David, one of Olivia's classmates. "Isn't that right, David?" David's face drained of color. "Were you there on Friday night?" Megan asked, her voice calm but cutting. "Yes, but," David started, but Megan pressed on. "And did you know about the affair?" she asked, her voice hard. David lowered his gaze. "I knew," he admitted quietly. The room was silent, and I could feel the anger rising in my chest. Megan didn't hesitate. "David, you need to leave and think about your future here. If we find out you supported Olivia in any way, you'll be dismissed. Do you understand?" David stood up slowly, his face pale as he quietly left the room. The silence in the room was deafening, and I could feel everyone's eyes on me, but I didn't care. For the most part, I had forgotten David was even there. I didn't care about anyone except those who had ruined my life. I cleared my throat and refocused the room. "Everyone," I said, my voice steady despite everything, "my personal life is a mess right now, and my weekend wasn't pleasant. But we have work to do. We have clients to serve, and we need to support each other." I held up my bandaged hands. "If you need anything, let Megan know. I'll be here, but bear with me." I almost lost it, but somehow I kept it together as everyone expressed their sympathy and encouragement. "One last thing," I said, my voice more firm now. "Don't crucify David. We don't know the full story yet. Let's hold off on the judgment until we have all the facts." The team muttered in agreement, and Megan took over the rest of the meeting. Afterward, I went back to my office, sat down, and stared out the window, trying to clear my head. A few minutes later, Megan knocked and entered with David. "I think you two need to talk," she said softly. I nodded, settling into my chair. David sat across from me, not meeting my eyes. "Ethainery," he started, his voice quiet. I let out a short laugh, more out of disbelief than amusement. "Something funny?" I asked, my tone still harsh. "Ask Megan," David replied, his voice defeated. I raised an eyebrow. Her tone stern. David gave a sad smile. "No, nothing's funny. My boss was betrayed. My wife yelled at me all weekend. And now I might lose my job. It's either gallows humor or tears." I couldn't help but offer him a cautious smile. "I get it." David took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. "You've heard about how perfect Olivia and Lucas were in high school, right?" I nodded, already knowing where this was going. "Yeah," I said. "That's all I've been hearing about lately. how perfect they were. David continued, his voice low and almost apologetic. I was never part of the popular crowd, more of a math major type. But we all knew Olivia and Lucas. They broke up right before graduation when Lucas went overseas, and Olivia was devastated. Then I found out Lucas had a girlfriend back in the States. I nodded again, recognizing pieces of this story from when I helped Olivia pick up the pieces after her breakup with Lucas. Then we kissed, David added, almost like an afterthought. It wasn't anything special at first, just a comfort thing. But that was before all of this, before everything started falling apart. I let out a heavy sigh. So, you found out about their affair when? I asked, bracing myself for more of the truth I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. About an hour before you and Olivia showed up for dinner, David said. Some of the people from the reunion had already mentioned that Olivia was leaving you for Lucas. They weren't exactly quiet about it, and by the time you walked in, everyone knew. They'd been planning it for months. I stared at him, my mind racing. And Daniel and Sophia, they knew too? David winced but nodded. Yeah, they took Sherry and me aside and told us. They felt bad for you, but they said you weren't part of Olivia's future anymore. He paused, and I could see the guilt washing over him. Sorry, Ethainery, he said quietly. We wanted to stay and help you, but Daniel and some of the other guys made sure we didn't stick around. They told us to leave. I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me, but before I could speak, he held up his hand. I'm sorry, Ethainery. Let me finish, he said, eyes pleading for me to hear him out. I nodded, motioning for him to continue. We left the reunion because your wife was going to betray you, and we didn't know what to do, David said. Sherry and I didn't want to just walk away from you, but they made it clear we weren't welcome. We went to the club because we didn't know where else to go. I frowned. I didn't see you there, I said. Where were you when I showed up? We were there when you arrived, but we couldn't get close to you, David explained, looking down. A few guys kept us away until Olivia finally told you. When you left, we tried to follow, but by then you were already gone. We waited outside for about half an hour, unsure of what to do. Eventually, we went back inside. But David trailed off, his face clouded with frustration. When we came back in, half the class wouldn't talk to us. The other half acted like we were the enemy. We couldn't even get near anyone without being surrounded. It was like they were all in on it, like they were punishing us for not being part of their little conspiracy. He stopped, clenching his fists as though to hold back some emotional flood. And then, they all acted like you were nothing, Ethainery. As if you were already gone, like you didn't even matter anymore. I leaned back, the anger in my chest swelling. They planned this for months? I asked. David nodded. Yeah, there were rumors. Talk about Olivia and Lucas getting married soon. He swallowed hard. I didn't know what to do. Sherry and I were disgusted. We fought all night about it. David pulled out a piece of paper from his notebook, his movements slow and deliberate. He placed it in front of me. What's this? I asked, already dreading the answer. My resignation, he said softly, defeated. It was signed and dated yesterday. I looked at the paper in disbelief. David, no. I began, shaking my head. No, Ethainery, David interrupted, his voice firm for the first time. What they did was wrong. I couldn't just sit back and let you go through that. I couldn't stay and be part of it. You deserve better. And I realized that I couldn't help you from the sidelines. I stared at the resignation letter for a long time, a tight knot in my chest. And then, without thinking, I laughed. A sharp, barking laugh that felt strange coming from me. Megan and David looked at me, unsure what to make of it. I tore the resignation letter in half, the sound echoing in the quiet room. Your resignation is rejected, I said firmly, meeting David's eyes. Behind me, Megan smiled, and I could feel the tension in the room shift. Ethainery, why? David stammered, confused. My friends call me Ethan, I said quietly. You tried to help me, David. You were there when I needed it, even when you didn't know how bad it would get. If that's not a friend, then I don't know what is. David blinked, his eyes filling with gratitude. Sherry and I thought it would be easier for you, he said, his voice low. I know, I replied, my voice softening. And that's why I want you both to stay. We spent the next half hour talking things through. By the time we were done, the tension had all but disappeared. We called the rest of the team into the conference room and I explained the situation to them. David wasn't part of this, I said, my voice steady. He was caught in the middle, just like I was. And he didn't deserve to be treated like he was. Any animosity toward David melted away and by the end of the meeting, things felt a little lighter. The rest of the week passed in a blur of legal battles and work. I didn't send the divorce papers, Olivia filed them herself. In Australia, infidelity isn't automatically considered in divorce, but I made sure Thomas and Catherine, my lawyers, added it to the paperwork. Olivia's calls and texts went unanswered. I assumed they were full of anger, and frankly, I didn't care. My focus was on the business, managing the accounts, checking the canceled cards, making sure nothing slipped through the cracks. My team kept Olivia away from everything that mattered. Tuesday night, Megan came by my house to check on me. She gasped as she walked through the wreckage. I could see the shock on her face as she walked through the rooms. She cried as she took in the damage, but by Wednesday she'd contacted my insurance agency and arranged a damage assessment. By Friday, the cleanup crews and appraisers were scheduled to come in the following week. But despite everything, I couldn't sleep. The nights were the worst, lonely and full of thoughts I didn't want to face. Saturday morning, I went for a run. I ended up at a cafe, sitting in silence with a coffee and a croissant. It was the first time in weeks that I felt some peace, even if just for a moment. When I came home, I was surprised to see Olivia sitting on the steps. Her hair was messy and she was wearing mismatched clothes. "Ethan, it's good to see you," she said softly, her voice almost apologetic. I looked at her for a long time before I spoke. "What? Are you surprised I'm still taking care of myself after everything you did? You thought I'd fall apart, didn't you?" I spat out the bitterness that had been building inside me. "Did you think I'd eliminate myself, or just fall to pieces?" Olivia took a step back, her face going pale. "It wasn't like that, Ethan. I never meant to hurt you." I scoffed, the bitterness rolling off my tongue. "Yeah, right? You set all of this up to humiliate me in front of everyone." Her eyes dropped to the floor. "It wasn't my idea. Daniel and Lucas thought if we did it this way, you wouldn't resist." I laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh, just a hollow, empty sound. "You think I'd fight for you after what you did to me? You've lost your mind." "No buts, Olivia. You lost all respect for me the second you betrayed me. So now get out?" She looked at me, her eyes flashing with anger. "Ethan, you can't talk to me like that. I'm still your wife," she shouted, her voice rising. "Huh," I said, turning my back to her and walking toward the door. I unlocked it with deliberate slowness. When she tried to follow, I stepped in her path, blocking her way. "You're not invited," I said firmly. "But Ethan, this is still my house too." Olivia protested, her voice almost desperate. "No, it's not," I responded, my voice flat. "The house belongs to a trust. You don't live here anymore." I could see the confusion settling in her features. "This isn't your house anymore, Olivia. You lost that right when you chose to destroy everything we had." I went back inside, sending a quick text to my lawyer, grabbing a few things. When I returned, Olivia was still standing there, unsure, her presence lingering in the air like a shadow. "Ethan," she began, but I raised my hand, cutting her off. "First, it's Ethanery," I said, my voice unwavering. "Only friends call me Ethan, and you're no longer a friend." She swallowed hard, clearly taken aback by my coldness. "Second," I said, handing her a folder, "here's a check for your half of the assets." Her eyes widened as she took the folder from me, but I didn't give her time to speak. "Third," I asked, my tone sharp, "what do you have for me?" Olivia hesitated, then pulled a manila envelope from her purse, her hands shaking slightly. She handed it to me without a word. I opened it and skimmed the documents. My blood boiled. She was demanding 80% of our savings, 60% of my business, and get this, a restraining order that included my house. I couldn't stop the chuckle that escaped my lips, though it was bitter and cold. "Really?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "This is what you think I'll accept?" She couldn't even meet my gaze. She knew she'd gone too far, but the damage was already done. Just then I saw Daniel, Sophia, and Lucas coming down the street, making their way toward us. A smug grin crossed my face. "Oh, look. Here come the friends," I said, my voice dripping with disdain. Daniel stepped forward, trying to appear calm. "Ethan, come on, man, calm down," he said, his voice soft but firm. I took a step toward him, my eyes burning with anger. "Back off, Daniel," I snapped. "We're not friends. You and Olivia set me up. You humiliated me at that reunion and you knew exactly what was going on." Sophia tried to intervene, her voice pleading. "Ethan, don't, Sophia," I said, my voice cutting through her words. "You think I can forgive you for helping my wife cheat on me?" You helped plan every moment of that humiliation and now you want me to listen to you. Daniel and Sophia looked stunned, speechless for a moment. I could see the weight of their guilt starting to hit them, but I wasn't done yet. I looked at Sophia, a cold smile tugging at my lips. Sophia, tell me this, will you forgive Daniel when he comes home smelling of perfume after a night at a strip club? I said it slowly, savoring the shock on their faces. Sophia's eyes shifted from me to Daniel, her face pale. Baby, that's not true, Daniel stammered, his voice full of panic. I couldn't help but laugh, a cruel, mocking sound. No, it's not true, I said, but Daniel here loves to boast about the lap dances he gets during our golf outings. I wonder if that's where the perfume came from. Sophia's face went from disbelief to realization. The truth sank in and I saw her face twist in anger. Daniel took a step back, his face going pale. Without saying a word, he turned and bolted down the street, with Sophia shouting after him, her voice a mixture of frustration and confusion. I turned to Lucas, who stood frozen, his eyes wide with shock. Olivia, however, was standing there with a smug smile on her face, like she was still in control. Is this how you thought it would play out? I asked, my voice colder than ever. Did you really think you could humiliate me and walk away unscathed? Olivia didn't say a word, her grin only widening slightly. But inside I could see the cracks starting to form. She was losing control of everything, and she knew it. Ethan, Olivia said, her voice wavering. I mean, Ethane, you didn't have to do that. I looked at her with a cold grin, something almost sinister in my expression. Don't worry, Olivia. This is just the beginning. Daniel still has plenty of skeletons in his closet, and you and Lucas won't like what's coming next. What do you mean? Her voice faltered, and for a brief moment I almost felt something pity, maybe? But it was gone as quickly as it came. Go away, Olivia, I said, my voice firm, cutting through the tension between us. Tell Lucas to take you far away, because if you stay, things will only get worse for you. Her face twisted in disbelief. Ethan, what's wrong with you? Where's the man I loved? She asked, her voice trembling with frustration. I took a step back, looking at her for a moment, then turned away. He's dead, I said flatly, not even turning back to face her. You killed him. You ripped my heart out, and what's left is something you won't recognize. Something dark. I didn't wait for a reply. I slammed the door shut with a force that made the wood groan. Behind it, I let out a hollow laugh. The kind of laugh that only came when you were dead inside. 10 minutes later, I looked out the window. Olivia and Lucas were gone, their truck driving off into the distance. I sank to the floor, the adrenaline from the confrontation wearing off. I sat there shaking, caught between love and hate. I wanted her to regret everything, every lie, every betrayal, but I knew she wouldn't. I knew she'd move on. And even if she didn't, I couldn't accept her back. The thought made my stomach churn. The following month was a blur of lawyers, legal paperwork, and fighting over assets. My team at work rallied around me. Megan was a godsend, finding me a counselor to help me process everything and helping me get a new apartment. She also took charge of the house repairs, organizing everything. But Olivia wasn't letting go that easily. First, she tried to take $160,000 from our joint bank accounts. She demanded ownership of the house and the investment properties, but they were protected by a trust. She couldn't touch them, no matter how much she tried. Her lawyers, most likely paid by Lucas, fought hard, but they lost. I couldn't help but smile at the thought. She was throwing her money away, and for what? Then came the personal items. She wanted the furniture, the jewelry, everything that could be sold or had sentimental value. I had all of her things packed up and sent to her: shoes, necklaces, earrings, everything. It felt good to let go of it all, to sever the ties. She even tried to claim half of my business, but the prenup was clear. Catherine made sure to shut that down quickly. In the end, Olivia left with just $12,000, which I knew was probably all spent on lawyers. Meanwhile, I kept my houses, my business, everything that truly mattered. Catherine also got her to hand over the wedding and engagement rings. The restraining order she had slapped on me was lifted, as she had no legal right to the house anymore. I had the locks changed and security cameras were installed. The divorce was slow, dragging on for months. David and Rachel asked everyone to give us space, and Olivia and Lucas settled into an apartment provided by his company. Lucas had expected a mansion, but instead he got an apartment. He could have it. I didn't care anymore. By August, just 2 weeks before the divorce was final, I was buried in work. Tax season was in full swing, and my head was down trying to finish everything on time. That was when I was blindsided by a surprise visit from an old entrepreneur friend of mine. I didn't expect to see their face again. FNE, Daniel pleaded, his voice low and nervous as he sat across from me in the meeting room. You have to help me. I need your expertise. Sophia sat beside him, her eyes glued to the floor. The air between them was thick with awkwardness, and I could tell their relationship had changed since the last time we spoke. Their once easy camaraderie seemed like a distant memory. I leaned back in my chair, allowing myself a moment to enjoy their discomfort. "Why should I help you?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with an edge. "You humiliated me. You supported Olivia and Lucas. And now you want my help." Daniel's eyes flickered, his face full of desperation. "Really? Are you really going to make me beg?" I laughed, though it wasn't a laugh of amusement, it was full of bitterness and disdain. "Begging? That would be nice, but it's pointless. Why are you here? To try and save face? You didn't care about me when it mattered, so why should I care about your business now?" There was a long silence. No one spoke. Finally, Sophia broke the quiet. "You were right," she said, her voice barely audible. I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Sophia looked from Daniel to me, then back again, her eyes filled with guilt and regret. Daniel stared down at the table, unable to look me in the eye. "You were right," she repeated, her voice shaking. "Not just about Daniel's behavior, but everything. We were so caught up in Olivia and Lucas's true love that we didn't stop to think about you." I stared at them both. Daniel couldn't meet my eyes, and Sophia looked like she was holding back tears. There was no real redemption in their words, just the weight of a broken past. "So what now?" I asked, my voice flat. Sophia let out a hollow laugh, the sound of someone who had lost everything. "Now we face the consequences. We hurt the people we loved, and my marriage is barely hanging on. I don't know if it will survive." I turned to Daniel. He didn't speak, still avoiding my gaze. "I can't say I'm not pleased you're both suffering," I said softly, but the words felt empty now. "But as the managing partner of this firm, I've decided it's not in our best interest to continue handling your company's accounts." Daniel's shoulders slumped, the weight of his failure sinking in. "But," I continued, "I'm not heartless. I can recommend 3 firms that could take over your account." Daniel looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "David has the credentials," I said, turning to David, who handed over a sheet of paper with the details of the firms. "If you're serious, let David know and we'll forward your financial statements to them." Daniel looked confused, almost desperate. "That's it? A recommendation?" I shrugged, a small, bitter smile tugging at my lips. "Yes. A recommendation. You ruined my marriage by supporting Olivia and Lucas. You laughed and joked about it. This is your consequence." With that, I stood and walked out of the room without looking back. Later, David told me they had chosen one of the firms I recommended. The transfer would be completed once Daniel and Sophia signed the necessary paperwork. I didn't care anymore. The damage was done. I was done. In the month that followed, I lost 4 clients. All of them were friends of Olivia, and they sided with her when I made it clear that I wouldn't be doing any more business with them. But despite the setback, I ended up picking up 6 new clients who saw the whole situation differently. They didn't agree with what Olivia had done, and they were eager to support me. By the time September rolled around, my divorce was finalized. I'd moved back into the house after the renovations were completed, and the physical pain from my injuries had finally faded. The day I got the divorce papers, Olivia reached out both by phone and text. Her messages were short, just a simple goodbye and an apology. "Ethanui, I'm sorry." It hit me harder than I expected, but there was a strange sense of clarity in that moment. The hurt was still there, deep in my chest, but I also realized that if she could walk away from everything so easily, then she clearly wasn't the woman I thought she was. That weekend, Megan and the rest of my friends threw a surprise family barbecue at my place. Over 24 people showed up, including Megan, David, and Rachel. It was clear they wanted to make sure I wasn't alone. At one point, David took over the grill, and Rachel joined me on the porch, watching the kids run around in the yard. A pain settled deep inside me when I thought about how Olivia and I would never get to have the family we dreamed of. Rachel, seeing my distress, kissed me on the cheek and said, "Life will move on, Ethan. You'll have the love and support of your friends, your coworkers, and your family. We're here for you." Her hug was warm and comforting as I let the tears fall. David, Megan, and everyone else kept checking in on me throughout the day. Even though I felt like a wreck, their presence helped me feel a bit more at peace. The next week at work, things started to look up. The team noticed my improved mood, and I even cracked a few jokes at the weekly meeting. I made sure to thank everyone, especially David, Megan, and Rachel, for sticking by me. We landed 3 new clients, including 2 big corporations that needed some serious financial analysis. I threw myself into a forensic audit, focusing on the work to help keep my mind busy. Evenings were now filled with cooking dinner and sticking to a workout routine, my way of pushing through the betrayal. Then, 2 weeks after the barbecue on a Thursday night, I was in the middle of preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a nervous but strikingly beautiful blonde woman standing there. Before I could say a word, she leaned in and kissed me, tugging at my shirt. Her kiss was soft, with a hint of mint, and I kissed her back without thinking, pulling her closer. After what felt like an eternity, we pulled apart. But before I could even say hello, she slapped me, not hard, but enough to make me freeze. "I'm sorry, Athenry. That wasn't the best way to greet you," she said, her voice both sultry and firm. I just stood there, trying to figure out who she was. "Okay," I muttered, still unsure what was going on. The woman smiled. "I'm Charlotte." "Charlotte," I repeated slowly. We stood there in silence for a moment before I asked, "So, Charlotte, what brings you to my door tonight?" "You," she said simply. I raised an eyebrow. "I'm guessing that from your greeting. But why are you here? I mean, what exactly do you want from me?" She smiled back, a little more playful now. "You need me here." I couldn't help but chuckle even in my confusion. "So, tell me why I need you." "I enjoy kissing a beautiful woman," she said, clearly amused. "But that slap, that part confused me." I nodded. "Do you think I'm beautiful?" she asked. I smiled and nodded again. "Gorgeous." Her smile widened, and I found myself completely captivated by this woman I just met. "Thank you, Athenry," she said, blushing a little. "Does something smell good?" I sighed, content, and opened the door wider for her. "Come on in." We talked as I led her to the kitchen, poured her a glass of wine, and kept cooking dinner. I quickly fixed another plate for her, and she watched me work, holding her wine glass but not drinking from it. I set the table, dimmed the lights, and served the meal. Charlotte giggled. "For our first date, you order for me like some guy who knows exactly what he wants." I laughed. "I guess I do." She raised her glass and winked at me. "Even hurt, you know how to treat a lady." We clinked glasses, and I smiled, feeling lighter. Charlotte took a bite of the dish I prepared, and her eyes widened. "Athenry, this is amazing." "Thank you." I nodded, savoring the taste of the food myself. "I'm glad you like it." "So, Charlotte," I said, trying to break the tension. "No more games." "Who are you, really, and what's going on?" She took another bite and a sip of wine before responding. "First of all, thank you for handling my greeting with such grace. I stood at your door for almost 20 minutes before I knocked." I nodded, sipping my wine. "And who are you?" "We've met before." "I'm Megan's niece." "Charlotte." I blinked in recognition. "I remember you now. You look a lot different than the last time we met." She smiled, and I could picture her goth days, black hair, piercings, heavy makeup. "I was going through a rough patch," she said with a smile. "I had just broken up with my boyfriend, and I was lost. Megan brought me to your office after talking to my mom. It was just what I needed at the time." I nodded, remembering the day she came into the office. She had been all in black, and I'd noticed her piercings right away. "What happened with your boyfriend?" I asked. She sighed. "He cheated on me with 3 people. 2 girls and a guy." She said it so bluntly that I almost choked on my wine. "I walked in on them together at a guy's place, and I just ran home and cried for days. Mom convinced me to get out of the house, so she brought me to Aunt Megan. That's when I ended up at your office." I smiled, remembering how Aunt Megan had introduced us. "I remember you didn't look at me like I was pathetic, even though I probably seemed that way. You didn't judge me for how I looked. You just asked me what kind of coffee I wanted." I nodded. "I remember that." Charlotte grinned, recalling the moment we both shared. "Mocha with a double shot of chocolate," she said, and we both laughed as if we'd rehearsed it. "You remember, right?" she asked, a hint of playfulness in her voice. I took another sip of wine, nodding. "Yeah, I remember." But then her smile faded slightly as she continued, her voice softening. "The slap, it was because you didn't notice me at the barbecue," she confessed, her gaze locking with mine. "Charlotte, I'm sorry," I said, the apology coming out more genuine than I expected. "It was just a tough day." She gave me a small, understanding smile. "It's okay, Athenry. It wasn't meant to be serious. In my head, I kissed you and then slapped you because I felt invisible. I even tried to comfort you and tell you everything would be okay. But I guess you don't really remember much from that day." I tried to recall, and a vague image came to me: slender arms, dark blue jeans, and a red blouse with her reassuring words. "Yeah, I remember. Red top and blue jeans." Charlotte nodded, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. "I asked Aunt Megan about you recently," she said, a blush creeping up on her face. "She knew I had feelings for you and encouraged me to reach out. That's why I came over." I chuckled softly. "So, this was a plan all along?" Charlotte looked away, embarrassed. "Not exactly. I didn't know if I could actually do it. But when you opened the door, I just went for it. I kissed you." I reached for her hand. "I'm glad you did. Honestly, it was the best thing that's happened to me in a long time." Her eyes brightened, and we spent the next few hours talking. She helped me clean up dinner, and we moved to the living room, continuing our conversation over port. I learned more about her, how she was 28, 4 years younger than me, and had just graduated in finance. She shared her love for various music genres, though she couldn't stand the metal music she'd been into during her goth phase. Now, she worked as a junior accountant at a manufacturing firm, something she really enjoyed. Charlotte was close with her family, her parents celebrating 30 years of marriage, and a younger sister who lived in Tennessee. She loved the beach but had sensitive skin, so she didn't get to visit often. She'd only had 2 boyfriends, one of whom had betrayed her, cheating with multiple people. We shared stories about our own lives. I talked about the rift between my mother and me after my father passed unexpectedly. My sister also played a part in the tension by misinterpreting something Olivia had said. By 1 a.m. Charlotte decided it was time to leave, although neither of us wanted the night to end. As I lay in bed later that night, a real smile finally spread across my face. Charlotte's unexpected actions had broken down walls I didn't even realize I had, and for the first time in months I felt like someone could genuinely care about me, maybe even more than just as a friend. The next morning I couldn't stop smiling. Everyone at the office noticed the change in me, and by lunchtime Megan was practically bursting with curiosity. "Okay, Ethan, spill the beans. Who is she?" she asked with an eager grin. "Charlotte came over last night," I replied simply. Megan squealed with excitement, her joy echoing through the office. She made me recount every detail, laughing at the kiss and the slap. "Ethan, I'm so happy for you. Even if nothing comes of this, just seeing you move past what Olivia and everything else did to you, that's worth it. But honestly, I think there's something between you and Charlotte." We talked a little more, and I told Megan that Charlotte and I had been texting nonstop and were planning to have dinner together again on Friday. Megan's enthusiasm was contagious, and soon everyone in the office was smiling along with her. Friday night came, and I picked Charlotte up. I'd asked her to dress up for our first real date, and when she opened the door, I couldn't help but feel taken aback. "Wow, you look amazing." She laughed softly. "What, you didn't expect that?" "Not exactly," I grinned. "But wow, you're stunning." We walked out hand in hand to my car. When I opened the door for her, she hesitated. "Is this your car?" she asked, looking at it with wide eyes. "Yeah," I said, chuckling at her reaction. Charlotte's jaw dropped. "Oh my God, that's a 1967 GT Mustang, gray with black racing stripes and a modified exhaust. I can't believe it." I laughed. I'm surprised Olivia didn't try to take it in the divorce. She knew how much I loved this car. I opened the passenger door for her, and she smiled as she slid inside. The engine roared to life when I started it, and Charlotte couldn't stop giggling at the sound. We headed into town, talking about our weeks and how Megan had high hopes for us as a couple. Dinner was at a fancy Japanese restaurant where we shared various dishes and tried some sake. We both agreed it was fun for a date, but not something we'd have regularly. After dinner, we made our way to the casino where we made a few bets and ended up walking away with $650 more than we came with. There was a club in the casino, so we changed into more formal clothes and headed in. It was a classy spot full of people from all walks of life. Throughout the night, guys approached Charlotte to dance, but she declined every time with a polite smile. At one point, a guy stopped me and said, "You're a lucky guy. Your woman only has eyes for you." I turned to ask Charlotte to dance, but she shook her head firmly, declining. The guy, clearly good-looking and probably a personal trainer or athlete, patted me on the shoulder with a grin before walking away. Saturday morning, I woke up smiling, remembering the fun of the night with Charlotte. We spent the entire weekend together, only getting up for food or showers. When Monday came, I drove her back to her apartment in the dress she wore on Friday night. By the time I got to the office, I was already showing off 2 new pictures of her on my phone. Charlotte stayed with me every night that week except for Wednesday when she had to work late. "Hey, Ethan," David said to me one morning as we went out for coffee, his voice full of curiosity. "Got a minute?" David asked as he walked into my office and shut the door behind him. I looked up from my desk, expecting some work-related issue, but he seemed a bit uneasy. I raised an eyebrow. "You and Charlotte doing well, huh?" "Yeah," he grinned. "It's only been a few months, but it feels like we've known each other forever." I chuckled. "Rachel and I have been together almost 5 years, but sometimes it feels like 10 in the best way." David nodded, his face softening a little. "Rachel and I are just glad to see you smiling again. Honestly, we've been talking and we were wondering if you and Charlotte would like to come over for dinner this Saturday." "I'll check with her, but I think we're free," I said, feeling a bit of excitement. Then David shifted and his expression turned more serious. He hesitated before asking, "Ethan, this is about Olivia." My mood shifted immediately. "What about her?" I asked, worried. David sat down, looking a bit more tense. You know about the Kensington audit, right? I nodded, already knowing this was business-related. Kensington was a major client we had recently started working with, and David was leading the audit. Yeah, I know. What's the issue? David laid some papers on my desk. We uncovered something serious. One of their middle managers has been embezzling funds for years. And not just small amounts. We're talking millions. I stared at the reports, trying to process it all. You're telling me this guy's been using company money to cover his personal expenses? What kind of expenses? Pretty much everything, David said, a dry laugh escaping his lips. He's been paying for things like personal services, a mistress, and even child support for a kid he has overseas in the United States. All from the company's pocket. I was in disbelief. So for the past few years, he's been funneling money into this double life? That's insane. Exactly, David replied. He was smart about it, though. Hid the money across multiple departments and projects. In total, just under $3 million. Unbelievable, I muttered. What a mess. A month later, we handed over the initial audit report to Kensington, but we held back the full details until we completed a more thorough investigation. They were clearly concerned about internal corruption, but they agreed to wait while we dug deeper. 2 weeks later, I came home on a Friday to find Charlotte had planned a surprise dinner for me. She greeted me with a cold drink and a warm smile, and I noticed a small box sitting between us. I didn't comment on it right away, but it caught my attention. After we finished dinner, we moved to the living room, where we refilled our drinks, dimmed the lights, and let some soft music play in the background. Charlotte looked at me seriously. Ethan, these last 6 months have been the best of my life, she said, her voice steady. I know you were broken when we met. But so was I. Our relationship has been amazing because we've both given ourselves completely to each other. I love you, Ethan, and I need you to know that before you open this box. She handed it to me, and I could feel my heart racing as I looked at the small box and the envelope sitting on top. I opened the envelope first, reading the letter inside. Ethan, inside this box is the engagement ring you bought last week. I found it while cleaning, and I didn't look inside. I wanted to, but I didn't. The ring inside was simple gold with a single diamond. I was speechless. Charlotte smiled, a look of warmth and trust in her eyes. I dropped to one knee, feeling everything fall into place. Charlotte Brown, you brought me back to life. Before you came into my life, I didn't think I'd ever be happy again. You showed me what it's like to feel loved again. I was planning to do this at your family's barbecue, but I can't wait any longer. Charlotte Beth Brown, will you marry me? Charlotte's eyes lit up and she jumped up, shouting yes. She held out her hand and I slipped the ring onto her finger. We kissed and I pulled back, grinning. Thank you, my fiancé, I said. You're going to be the most loving wife in the world. And just wait until we have kids. Before we could enjoy the moment, the doorbell rang. I groaned, but I answered it only to find Megan, her parents, David, and Rachel all standing there, grinning like idiots. Congratulations, they shouted in unison. Charlotte gave me a mischievous grin. Sorry, babe. I wanted to celebrate, so I invited a few people over for a little surprise. Surprise? I echoed, my mind still spinning from the proposal. We let everyone in, and her parents brought 2 bottles of champagne. As they poured the drinks, I couldn't stop smiling. The women gathered around Charlotte, admiring her ring while I got a few slaps on the back from her dad and David. We spent the evening sharing stories about Charlotte's childhood, laughing and enjoying the company. When the last guest left, Charlotte and I headed to bed, but not before taking a few more pictures of her engagement ring. In those pictures, it was the only thing she was wearing, and it made me smile. A month later, 3 big things happened in just 48 hours. First, we delivered the completed forensic report to Kensington. They weren't pleased, and the fallout would be big, but they agreed to hold off on any actions until we finished the investigation. Second, Charlotte came by my office with some wedding ideas and a prenuptial agreement. When I saw the prenup, I was furious. Becca, this prenup leaves you with nothing, I said, frustrated. It only leaves me with nothing if I cheat on you, she answered, calm and collected. But I'll never do that. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I know you're trying to protect me, but I've already got protections in place. I don't need anything else. She took my hands in hers. This is my promise to you, I will only walk away with nothing if I cheat on you. You have my word. I looked at her, trusting her completely. Okay, I trust you, I said, signing the papers. We talked about it enough that I knew she was doing what she thought was right, and it felt like the right move. The third thing happened the following evening, right after dinner. When I got home, Charlotte, who had moved in permanently, sent me off to take a shower. I had just finished when I heard shouting. I quickly threw on some shorts and rushed out to find my ex-wife, Olivia, yelling at Charlotte. "So, you move out and he moves in?" Olivia screamed. Charlotte just laughed. "You left the most loving man on the planet and shattered his heart." Olivia's eyes flashed with anger. "Yes, I agree with that. But I'm Athena's personal trumpet, his body's for him alone, exclusive use. Could you say the same when you were married to him?" Charlotte's smile was sweet but sharp. "Oh, I can say I was his first love." "Could you? You never gave him your heart fully." Olivia's face twisted with rage. "You little tramp," she spat, and a slap echoed through the room. I moved fast, rushing into the living room. There was Olivia, her cheek bright red from the slap, and Charlotte standing there, calm but obviously holding back her frustration. "Charlotte," I said with a smile, trying to lighten the mood, "meet Olivia, my ex-wife." Then I turned to Olivia. "Olivia, meet Charlotte, my fiancée." The two women stared at each other, sizing each other up. I stepped in between them before things could escalate. "Do you find this amusing, Ethan?" Olivia asked, her voice tight. "Actually, yes," I replied, grinning. "Since you weren't invited here and started yelling before you got slapped, I do find it funny. Maybe it's a little karma for how our life together ended." Charlotte gave a small grin, but I raised my hand to stop her from speaking. "That's enough, Becca," I said. "What do you want, Olivia?" Olivia sighed heavily, clearly exhausted. "Why did you have to ruin my life?" I stared at her for a moment, trying to keep my voice steady. "What do you mean?" "Olivia, I haven't had anything to do with you for almost a year. You left me for true love and didn't care about the consequences." Behind me, Charlotte snorted. "You didn't have to destroy Lucas, Olivia." Olivia looked up at us, her voice suddenly softer. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she murmured. I crossed my arms, watching her closely. "You're going to have to be more specific, Olivia. It was your decision to leave me, but you also pushed me into a corner with your actions. You wanted Lucas, but the consequences have caught up with him." She paled, her face going white. "What do you mean?" she asked, trembling. I leaned in, locking eyes with her. "Yes, Olivia, your true love has a woman and a child in the States, and he's been stealing company money to support them. It's all in the forensic report we did on Kensington. Want me to send you a copy?" Olivia sank to the ground, her face crumpling as she realized the gravity of what I just said. For the first time, I saw her truly lose everything she thought she had built her life on. She sat there on the porch, defeated, her world crumbling. Charlotte and I stood back, watching her. Then Olivia spoke again, but her voice was different, quiet, hollow. "He got arrested." "You know," she said, her anger replaced by grief. "I didn't know he was arrested," I said softly. "But I suspected the authorities were catching on." Olivia's tears started to flow freely now, and she sobbed. "We've been married less than 3 months, and he's spent a month of that in the States." I felt a twinge of sympathy for her, but only for a moment. I'd been married to her for years, shared countless moments with her, both good and bad. But she was also the one who had tormented me, throwing me away without a second thought. "What should I do now?" Olivia asked, looking up at Charlotte. "I gave up everything for a dream, and now it's all falling apart." Charlotte shrugged, her voice steady. "Honestly, I don't care what you do anymore, Olivia. You let everything slip out of your control, and I won't let you back into Ethan's life. He's mine now, and if you try to interfere, you don't want to see how far I'll go." She walked over to me, her hands slipping into mine. I squeezed her fingers tightly, knowing that I was finally where I belonged. I finally found my voice and looked at Olivia with a calm, steady resolve. "Charlotte's right," I said. "She belongs to me now, and I belong to her. We'll marry, have children, and love each other for the rest of our lives. I don't love you anymore, Olivia. I remember what it was like to love you, but after everything that's happened, there's nothing left for you. After your betrayal and Charlotte's love, I can't hold on to anything for you." Olivia stood frozen, her face showing the utter devastation I hadn't seen before. For a moment, I almost felt pity for her. But I pushed it down. "I don't like you anymore. You've hurt me in ways I never thought possible. But I'll give you some advice: divorce Lucas. Leave him before it all collapses on you." Olivia's eyes were wild with fear, and she asked, "Where will I go? What do I do?" I couldn't help but shrug. "I don't care, Olivia. Maybe Daniel and Sophia will take you in. They're getting a divorce too." Olivia seemed to crumble at the thought, murmuring bitterly, "Not surprising. A cheating spouse is bound to end like that. You've lost control of everything, Olivia. And I'm not your friend anymore. We're not even people who once had something." "We were, but not anymore," I said, my voice steady. Charlotte nodded, her voice quiet but firm. "No chance of being friends. Not after everything." Olivia looked from me to Charlotte, her face twisted with sorrow. "Thank you for being honest with me," she said, a bitter laugh escaping her. "I wish we could still be friends, but I see now that was just a dream." She gave us one last, sorrowful look, then turned and walked to her car, her shoulders slumped in defeat. As she drove away, I realized how much of my life had been caught up in her lies and how freeing it was to finally let it go. In the following month, the media began covering Lucas's arrest and details from the Kensington audit became public. Our company, which had already been growing, saw an explosion in demand, and by the end of the year we had doubled our staff. Charlotte and I had a small wedding, just a few friends and family surrounded by love and joy. We honeymooned in North Carolina, walking along the golden beaches, feeling the weight of the world lifting from our shoulders. When we came back, we slipped into a routine, work, love, and planning for the future. Charlotte stopped taking birth control and we began to let life unfold at its own pace. 9 months later, Emily was born. 2 years after that, we had Henry and Peter, our twins. And then, another 2 years down the line, Isabella joined our family. After that, we decided 4 children was enough. I had surgery to make sure our family was complete. Life was rich and fulfilling. We had our share of the usual family problems, but there was always love at the heart of our home. Then, 32 years later, a cold winter morning arrived and Charlotte's battle with cancer ended. She fought for 2 long years, but even at the end, she still needed to feel my love. We had spent so many years together, and it felt like we had become part of each other. Even now, she needed to know I was there with her. "Baby," she whispered, her voice thin but filled with warmth, "you're going to be okay. I'm not leaving you alone." I gently stroked her graying blonde hair. "I know. It won't be long before I find you again," I said, my voice cracking. She smiled weakly. "Yeah," she said, remembering with me the time when a blizzard had kept me away from her for 3 weeks. "I know you'll miss me." "You know I'll miss you with everything I have," I replied. "But I'll find you again. I promise." We lay together in the quiet of the room, not needing words. After a few moments, she squeezed my hand. "I'm scared," she whispered, tears sliding down her face. I held her close. "I know," I said softly. "But I'll be here for you. I won't leave." She nodded faintly, drawing comfort from my words. "That's the only thing that gives me strength." The following day, our children arrived with their families. We gathered around Charlotte, who was weaker than ever, her skin pale and her energy fading. We spent the day sharing memories, laughing, and crying. We sang songs and talked about the years we had spent together, the years of joy and love. When I hugged her that day, I whispered, "I love you." My voice trembled as I felt the time slipping away. "I love you," she replied softly. Her hand reached up to lightly slap my cheek, the same way it had when we first met. We both smiled through the tears, and she pulled me close for a kiss. For a brief moment, it was like all the years melted away and she looked young again, full of life, free from the disease that had taken so much from her. As I held her close, the warmth of that kiss lingered, and then I felt her slip away. I held her as she passed, my tears soaking the sheets, knowing that a part of me had left with her. Surrounded by our children, we cried openly, the weight of loss heavy in the room. Charlotte, my true love, my soulmate, was gone. And even though I knew I would never be the same without her, I also felt a sense of peace. She was no longer in pain. Though she was gone, every day of my life was a reminder of her love, the way she had changed me, the life we had built together. It would never be the same, but I would carry her love with me always. Months passed since Charlotte's passing, and my children remained a constant source of support. Friends like David and Rachel always made sure I wasn't alone, and slowly I found a new rhythm in life. I still felt her absence deeply, but there was comfort in the love of my family, in the familiar moments of daily life. Whenever loneliness crept in at night, I'd look through the countless photos and videos of Charlotte, her smile, her laugh, our kids. It brought me some peace. 6 months after Charlotte's death, I sat in our favorite local cafe, sipping my coffee. I was lost in my thoughts when a shadow fell over me. I looked up to see a face I hadn't seen in years, Olivia. "Ethanoi." Her voice sounded older, a little weaker, but unmistakable. I recognized her right away. She had aged, and the years were clearly written on her face. I gestured to the empty seat across from me. "Would you care to join me?" She hesitated for a moment but then nodded and sat down. I studied her. She looked so different. Her face was lined with wrinkles, and there was a gauntness to her features, a shadow of the woman I once loved. "How have you been?" I asked, trying to keep the tone light, though I wasn't sure what to expect from this conversation. "Oh, you know," Olivia said with a slight sigh. "As I get older, my body doesn't react the way it used to. Sometimes I wonder if I should just stay in bed to avoid the pain." She smiled faintly, but there was sadness in her eyes. I chuckled a little, understanding her sentiment. "I get that." Olivia smiled too, but then her expression softened and her eyes became sadder. "I heard about Charlotte," she said quietly. "I'm so sorry, Ethan." I nodded, my heart aching a little. "I miss her terribly." but she's always in my heart. The kids don't give me a moment's peace now that Becky's gone, but they're doing their best to keep me active, to look after me. Olivia smiled briefly, but it was a sad smile. Do you have kids? She asked. I shook my head. No, I don't, Olivia said, looking down at her coffee. I've never had children. I've been married 6 times, but I never found anything like what I had with my first love. I really blew it, didn't I, Ethan? She looked up at me with regret. I took a breath. I had hated this woman for a long time, but now, seeing her in front of me broken, sad, and alone, I felt something different. I saw someone who had never truly found love after everything had fallen apart. Jill, I said, my voice softer now, you need to forgive yourself. Not every one of those 6 marriages could have been as bad as Lucas's. Surely some of them were okay. Her eyes drifted off, unfocused for a moment. You're right, she said quietly. My 4th husband, Adam, he was kind and gentle. But after everything with you and Charlotte, I never forgave myself for what I did to you. I wanted to love, but I never got over the pain I caused you. She looked at me, her eyes filled with raw emotion. I know I've said this before, but I'm truly sorry for what I did to you, Ethan. Thank you, Olivia, I said, my voice calm. I accept your apology. We both smiled, a fleeting moment of peace between us. We spent the next few hours talking about life, about Charlotte, about our children. I shared stories of our family and the years we'd spent building a life together. Olivia talked about her life after retirement from local government work, about hobbies she'd picked up and the loneliness she had come to terms with. Ethan, she began, hesitantly, as we stood to leave. Do you think that, after all this time, we could have been happy? I smiled, shaking my head. No, Olivia. I love my wife too much. I know you loved Charlotte, but she's gone. She's always with me in my heart. Olivia's eyes searched mine, and she struggled to find the right words. I understand, she said quietly. But will you ever be able to let go of me? Will you ever forgive yourself for not seeing the good in what we had? I held up my hand gently. Olivia, Charlotte, and I were only separated for a short time, and we'll be reunited again. My love for her burns just as brightly as it did the day we met. I cannot and will not cheat on her, not in this life, not in the next. I told you, and I meant it. My words seemed to hit her harder than I expected, and she nodded slowly, her face etched with something between acceptance and sorrow. We'll see, I said softly. A decade passed, and I lived those years content in my family, surrounded by my children and their families. But then, on a quiet Saturday afternoon, everything changed. I was sitting down with Emily and Isabella having lunch when the fatigue I'd been feeling caught up with me. I sat down to watch TV, feeling no pain, just exhaustion. I closed my eyes, and that's when I felt it. Arms around my waist. Becca? I asked, confused, but then I knew. I could feel her. It's okay, baby, she whispered. It's your time now. I looked around. The kids, are they ready? Charlotte smiled softly. They've noticed how much you've slowed down this past month, but they've been ready. You haven't. I paused. This is real, isn't it? I asked her, still in disbelief. Charlotte laughed, pulling me close and kissing me gently. Yes, it's real. And what a way to go, kissing your wife until your last breath. For the next hour, I watched my family gather, tears flowing freely. There was sorrow, yes, but also laughter. They shared stories of Charlotte and me, moments of love and joy. And in the middle of it all, Charlotte and I stood together, proud of the family we'd built. When the paramedics came to take my body away, Charlotte and I kissed our children, knowing it would be a long time before we saw them again. But to them, we were just a slight shift in the air, barely noticeable. Come on, baby, Charlotte said softly, wiping away her tears. I've got so much to show you. We have a lot of love to make up for. I raised an eyebrow, half joking, don't I have to go see God or something? Well, yeah, she said, grinning. He's waiting for you, but don't worry, he's a good guy. I looked at her, still amazed by how young and vibrant she looked, just as she had when we first met. Wait, I asked, almost teasingly, there's entertainment in heaven? Charlotte smiled, her eyes sparkling. She grabbed my hand and pulled me along. Come and find out, my true love.